Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Great to be here this morning. Bonjour et bienvenue. Je m'appelle Diana Fox-Connie. Je suis ravie d'être votre modératrice pour ce lancement, ce beau matin. I would first like to start by acknowledging that OCAF is located on traditional and unceded Algonquin territory. We acknowledge the original inhabitants' claim to this land and commit to working with all Indigenous people towards reconciliation and decolonialization. We believe that carbon reduction is integral to strengthening these relationships and this work. And I think that really is at the core of what we want to do with OCAF, which is to bring people together around this national and global emergency. So like all good things, OCAF has been a long time in gestation. I'm sure this wasn't quite the launch that people had in mind when they began talking about OCAF around 4 years ago. But here we are, and it's really great to be getting going. I'm an advisory board member of the Ottawa Climate Action Fund. And I believe, as I believe everyone on this call does, I believe very strongly in the importance of local action. If we're going to get to net zero, we all have to be part of the solution, and cities are a really great place to start. So we've had much support in this endeavour from the Government of Canada and from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Today, we're going to learn about key opportunities and challenges and OCAF's approach. But first of all, I would like to welcome and thank Minister O'Regan, Minister of Natural Resources, and ask him to be the first speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana, and hello, everyone. Je vous joins depuis l'île de Terre-Neuve, le territoire ancestral du peuple Mi'kmaq Beothuk. J'aurais aimé être là avec vous aujourd'hui. Heureusement, grâce au vaccin qui arrive à chaque semaine, ce sera bientôt possible. Until then, we will keep things virtual. I think the last time I was in Ottawa, we were talking about ZEBI, which is, as many of you know, the net zero development that straddles Ottawa and Gatineau. And I spoke then about how tough this winter has been for communities in Labrador. And I'm going to talk about that again today because it bears repeating. I think it reminds us all why we are here today and why we are doing what we're doing. Some of you here today may not have been there. So this may not have when I talked about Labrador, but in Labrador, this past winter was scary. It was a winter unlike any that people here can remember. In Inuit and Innu communities on the coast, just 200 kilometers north from where I grew up in Happy Valley Goose Bay, people are experiencing things that their elders never did. Average temperatures 10 degrees higher than normal, 10 degrees in the height of winter. Ice coverage melting faster than in any other part of the country. I mean, the Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. Northern Nunavut, that northern part of Labrador, is losing its ice coverage faster than anywhere in the Canadian Arctic. It's not only alarming, it's dangerous, especially for Inuit communities that have depended on thick ice to move around, to hunt, to fish, to travel from community to community. In some places where the spring ice would normally be a meter thick, this year it's not even a foot thick. It's barely thick enough to support a snowmobile. It's that fast. This is happening that fast, and it's making travel between those communities potentially fatal. Climate change is threatening the survival of our communities now. It's threatening our future now. So it is up to us to act, because while climate change is often measured globally, it is felt locally. We have to fight it in our own backyards, and we are. We're supporting local climate solutions with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities through the Low Carbon Cities Canada LC3 initiative, a network of 7 LC3 climate centers across Canada. They're going to take local ideas and bring communities together to turn them into the urban solutions that we need. Things that are making our existing homes and buildings more efficient, which also tends to make them more comfortable and affordable, by the way, or building new net zero office towers, or putting solar panels on rooftops, or turning organic waste into renewable gas, or things we haven't even thought of yet. Our only limitation will be our creativity and our ingenuity. Tout ça commence aujourd'hui lorsque le Fonds d'action climatique d'Ottawa, qui fait partie de la Fondation communautaire d'Ottawa, prend le règne du Centre climatique urbain. Donc, félicitations. Congratulations. I know you will play a big part in achieving our common goal, which is net zero emissions by 2050, a prosperous economy that continues to create jobs, and a low carbon future that leaves no one behind. I wish you guys every success, and I thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Mr. O'Regan. And I think you're completely right to focus on the innovation and the jobs and the positive aspects of what we're trying to do here. Thank you for that. I'd now like to bring in Minister McKenna, who is, of course, Ottawa Centre MP as well.
Well, thank you very much, Diana, and welcome to everyone who's here. And thanks for dropping in, Seamus. You're a great ally in the fight against climate change, even if you're all the way in Newfoundland and Labrador. I want to acknowledge that I'm on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples in my house, which hopefully means no disruption, because sadly my kids are not in school, hopefully one day. Look, local solutions are critically important. And I have been so impressed by what I have seen in Ottawa, over the last decades, but also the momentum in the last few years. For the first time ever, I kind of feel like everyone's getting to be on the same page. We've always had amazing organizations like Ecology Ottawa and Enviro Centre. Nature Canada's here, the Canada Green Building Council, but we're expanding the pie. And others groups are recognizing that climate isn't a one issue thing, it's an everything thing. We have to find solutions for everything we do. And local solutions are so critically important. I was actually part of a discussion yesterday. It was on the road to COP26. So not everyone's gonna go to COP26, but it was talking about the role of cities. And how we have targets up here, but the only way you can reach them if you have ambition here, and that goes up. We all are in this together. And where are our emissions? Just to remind everyone, you have to just be actually very focused. Our emissions are in the transportation sector. That's critically important that cities step up and we get good transportation. The good news, we're on the second phase of LRT. Government has announced historic investments in the first ever active transportation fund. I know everyone loves the Flora Footbridge, but cycling paths everywhere, connecting them to public transit. 80% of Ottawans will live within 5 kilometers of LRT. We gotta get everyone there. We gotta make it an irresistible option. The built environment. So we talked about the Zibi development. It's going to be the first, sustainable city in Canada or community in Canada. But beyond that, I look at our affordable housing providers. They've showed people actually you can do passive housing, including for affordable housing, because it's just smart. It's about saving money. And we certainly should be doing that for the most vulnerable. So there's so many opportunities here, and we're finally getting ambitious. We all need to be ambitious for our city. I have put it out there that we can be the greenest capital ever. So you're all part of this. Everyone who's watching too, we need to make it happen, whether it's planting more trees, whether it's getting better public transit and getting cars off the road, whether it's making sure every single thing we build, like our new Ottawa library, our super library is net zero, whether it's reimagining our city around the water, which I know the NCC is doing, we can do this. So let's do it.
Fantastic. Thanks for getting us going this morning, and thanks for your efforts both at federal level and at local level. And I think it is about vision, and hopefully we will be part of delivering that vision. So next, I'd like to bring in Garth Frizzell, who is the president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and whose day job it is to think about all these issues. Well, not in addition to being a city councillor in Prince George. So he's got a lot on his plate, but he's a great champion of these things. So welcome.
Thank you, Chair. And I can't match the winter warmth of Minister O'Regan. I certainly can't match the early morning optimism and excitement of Minister McKenna because we're 3 hours earlier here right now. But I can speak on behalf of 2,000 member municipalities, and I will say thank you. Bonjour tout le monde. I'm Garth Frizzell. I'm president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and I'm joining you from Prince George, BC today on the traditional unceded ancestral territory of the Lheidli. Across the country, cities are at the leading edge of developing low carbon solutions. they're ready to address the challenges and opportunities of a clean energy future. Renforcer l'expertise locale est essentiel pour atteindre nos objectifs climatiques. Le lancement d'aujourd'hui est un excellent exemple. Today's announcement is a real step in the right direction. There's never been a more important time to accelerate urban climate solutions. And we're really pleased to work with the Ottawa Climate Action Fund and Low Carbon Cities Canada. This funding is part of the federal government's $1.65 billion investment in FCM's Green Municipal Fund, a proven leader in driving green innovation across the country. So we look forward to continuing to work with the Government of Canada to help make our cities and our communities more resilient. That's how we're going to be meeting Canada's climate goals. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ottawa, for those of you who don't know, OCAF is being incubated within the Ottawa Community Foundation. And the next person I'd like to bring is Marco Pagani, who's the CEO of the foundation.
Merci, Diana. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un très, très grand plaisir de vous avoir ici avec nous. Good morning and thank you. Special thanks to, of course, the federal government, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Together, you've funded and operationalized the Low Carbon Cities Canada initiative. And for that, we will be eternally grateful. Thank you, Minister O'Regan, and President of FCM, Garth Frizzell. A special thanks to our local MP, the Honorable Catherine McKenna, who has been, continues to be a champion globally, nationally, and locally. And I'm particularly grateful to her for her support of the Ottawa Community Foundation over the years. We really, really appreciate it. Incubating the Ottawa Climate Action Fund within the Ottawa Community Foundation takes advantage of things we do naturally well, like investing and impact investing and granting and convening and a bunch of other things. You know, OCAF is all about carbon down and community up, and incubation within an organization that's about poverty down and homelessness down and food insecurity down and unemployment down and community up makes so much sense. You know, in fact, we see this OCAF LC3 set of initiatives as a social infrastructure play. You know, what does that mean? It means we're creating a permanent community asset for the betterment of Ottawa. So my hope is that, you know, this is one of many collaborations with Minister McKenna and the Ministry of Infrastructure in particular, where we take advantage of their vision and their intentionality and their diligence around infrastructure projects and apply this to social infrastructure as well. And the Ottawa Community Foundation is certainly ready and excited and energized to participate in that. I'd like to introduce our world-class OCAF Executive Director, Steve Winkleman, who has over 30 years of international experience. But prior to hearing from Steve, we do have an introductory OCAF video, so maybe we can launch the video. Thanks, everybody.
Our region has no shortage of smart people or great ideas. We know most of the solutions for cutting carbon. We know much of what the future needs to look like, but we don't really know how to get from here to there. More than new solutions, we need better ways to align potential. The Ottawa Climate Action Fund exists so that low-carbon solutions reach their full potential in Ottawa. By filling gaps and removing hurdles, by strengthening partnerships and supporting new business models, OCAF unlocks multiple benefits. Because to succeed, low-carbon solutions must help everyone through green jobs, affordable housing, health, and resilience to extreme weather. OCAF is a platform to strengthen community. Success is people-centered. Now, more than ever, it's essential that our neighborhoods are convenient and safe for pedestrians. Our buildings are efficient, and our transport systems are low carbon and affordable. we need to work together to support our city's appropriately ambitious climate goals. We must address what people and businesses actually care about, fostering visionary thinking and action to deliver tangible successes. OCAF is here to accelerate Ottawa's transition to an equitable, carbon-neutral future. Join us in bringing carbon down and community up.
Merci les ministres, Monsieur Frizzell, FCM, bienvenue tout le monde. Mon travail sur le changement climatique m'a amené un peu partout dans le monde. Je voudrais partager une expérience dans le canal de Panama. In 2015, I was invited to brief the president of Panama on transit-oriented development based on work I was doing in Colombia with climate finance to bring together policy and infrastructure spending for housing, transportation, urban planning, and climate change. Now, as these things go, the president didn't show up, but senior cabinet members did. And we talked about just as the Panama Canal cuts travel distances by 60% because ships don't have to go around Cape Horn and brings tremendous economic benefits and also cuts emissions, in the same way, walkable communities, transit-oriented development, can cut driving in half, as colleagues and myself documented in the book Growing Cooler, and bring tremendous economic and community benefits, as we wrote about in Growing Wealthier. I got to stand in the new tranche of the Panama Canal about a year before it was filled with, I can't remember how many millions of liters of water. And it was inspiring and humbling. I was really struck by what human beings can do if we actually put our minds to something, if we actually plan well and team up and put our money on the table. We can do big things. And of course, it's not just about physical infrastructure. It's protecting natural infrastructure. And as Marco said, building the social infrastructure we need to address the challenge of our time, the climate emergency. And as you know, time is not on our side. As Minister O'Regan talked about the benefits and the impacts accelerating. So what brings me to Ottawa? Well, nice canals as well, but really the visionary approach of LC3 to bring federal resources to local centers to figure out meaningful, impactful solutions at the local level, and building upon what I call our big sister in Toronto, TAF, the Atmospheric Fund, with 30 years of experience. We can learn from each other. We're already sharing and supporting each other across the network. But really, the Ottawa Climate Foundation, the Ottawa Community Foundation, and their vision, and seeing the climate emergency as something that can actually be an opportunity to leverage the work they already do with communities around affordable housing, around social inclusion. They put in so much time and effort not to just make OCAF happen, but to make LC3 happen. And our partnership with the City of Ottawa and the Energy Evolution Strategy, which is going to be essential for accelerating Ottawa's transition to an equitable, carbon-neutral future. Now, we know most of the technical solutions for cutting carbon. Many of them are familiar. Most of them are literally iconic. But it's not all about high tech. In 2008, I was invited to Nashville to brief Al Gore about my work on urban planning and climate change. At the end of my presentation, he said to me, "But what's the disruptive technology?" So I paused and looked down at my feet, and I said, "Oh yeah, it's our feet. It's sidewalks as that enabling technology to deploy the low-carbon technology of pedestrians. There are other simple solutions. We've got to make sure our homes aren't leaking air. We need serious thermal insulation and cladding for our cold climate. And there's technology that's essentially more than a century old. All a heat pump is a refrigerator that runs forwards and backwards. Of course, new refrigerants, new technology that make it work in our cold climate, essential for decarbonizing our buildings and making them more resilient. But it's not just about the technology. Where and how will that technology be deployed? In private homes and condos and apartment buildings? Who's going to own it? Individuals, the city, companies? And who can afford it? These are the types of issues that OCAF will be wrestling with and look forward to working with you to solve. We know many of the financial tools and mechanisms and sources for cutting carbon, and we need more. But we also know that no one player can do it on their own. We've got to blend finance. We've got to stack capital. Également, il faut aligner les investissements publics entre les ministères fédéraux, entre les bureaux municipaux, et entre les trois niveaux de gouvernement. Because it's not about us. It's not about you either. It's about all of us. There's so much going on in Ottawa on climate action across all sectors, and there's such incredible potential that we can unlock if we work together, public, private, philanthropic, NGOs, universities, community groups, utilities. And OCAF has a unique role to play in this ecosystem. We put our top priority on cross-sector partnerships. We're looking for trust relationships. We're looking for surprising partners that can help us overcome barriers. We're looking for those investors who want to do local impact investing, project developers who care about community and climate, and who are those visionary private sector leaders who see the long-term value in decarbonization and are anxious to get going. OCAF exists to align this potential in Ottawa. Our priorities, as our big sister says, follow the carbon. So it's efficient buildings, sustainable transportation, and 15-minute neighborhoods. This is the connective urban fabric that ties together where we live, where we go, and how we get there. This is about city building. Our approach is to scale effective solutions, to align low carbon initiatives, and to couple climate solutions with community benefit. Our tools include research and grants. We plan to grant $350,000 this year, convening, communication, advocacy, and impact investing, up to about $1 million per year, which will be leveraged 2-3-fold time. And the important point here is no one project or investment or grant on its own is going to be transformative, but it's the portfolio of tools working together in partnership with others that we're going to leverage resources, overcome barriers, and inform and inspire replication. OCAF will succeed if we foster collaboration and build common cause, if we unlock potential and mobilize and align capital, and we make it easy to make that low carbon choice, how we spend, how we move about, how and where we live, what we consume. I'm pleased to announce that OCAF's first grant is going to EnviroCenter on behalf of the Ottawa Energy Collective Impact Coalition for the Ottawa Future Home Pilot that'll bring neighborhood-scale deep retrofits to 2 Ottawa neighborhoods, testing citizen engagement strategies, assessing the effectiveness of demonstration projects, and laying the groundwork for implementation and scale-up. And it aligns with the city's new Better Homes Ottawa program, including developing a new internet platform. I'm also pleased to announce that the Ottawa Community Foundation was successful in our proposal to Environment and Climate Change Canada, $380,000 to bring together leaders from climate change organizations and social inclusion, folks working on diversity, community service, BIPOC issues, gender equality, housing. What's the idea here? Let's just sit down and get to know each other. Who are you? What do you care about? What do you do? To try to find common interest, to try to see what we can do together. In the fall, we'll be sharing some communication messaging that we're co-creating, and we'll be developing collaboration action plans. The idea, of course, here is to make sure that we actually, when we invest to bring carbon down, that it does bring community up. And we'll be generating some of our own ideas. What I call green infill brings together efficient buildings and efficient neighborhoods. So net zero buildings in 15-minute neighborhoods, including secondary suites as part of retrofits. So that basement apartment that can bring you some new income, that can pay for those deep retrofits, enhance affordable housing supply, and support aging in place. And finally, critical to find common ground among community groups and private developers. We've got to work together to get from NIMBY to yes in my backyard. What's OCAF's greatest asset is the $21.7 million federal investment that we're honored to manage and deploy. Maybe. We also have this incredible advisory board chaired by Tracy Clark and Brian Toller, Councillor Moffat, Ana Guerrero Gonzalez, Diana Fox Carney are on the board. People said to me, Steve, do you really want 11 bosses? I said, yeah, when it's these 11 people with expertise in energy, philanthropy, finance, investment, policy, sustainable development, definitely. Thank you. I want to give a final shout out to Rebecca Aird of the Ottawa Community Foundation, who worked tirelessly for 3 years to make sure that OCAF happened. Merci tout le monde. Please join us in bringing carbon down and community up.
Thank you so much, Steve, for that introduction. It's super great to be getting going on this, as you said, and fantastic to hear we've made our first grant. We now have a few questions that we're going to introduce from some reporters. And following on from that practical side, Kate Porter from CBC Ottawa has asked what are some examples of the types of project that will be funded. You gave one example, but perhaps you can talk a little bit more about what you envisage and how many projects you hope we will be able to support annually and over the lifetime of the fund.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I mean, we're going to start out, as I said, this year with $350,000 in grants. The first grant is $75,000. So, maybe we'll do 5 to 7 grants per year. I think it's important for folks to understand that initially we will be cultivating those opportunities, and we'll consider in the fall whether we put forward a call for proposals. But Kate, it's going to be about our priority areas. So we're going to be looking at supporting walkable communities. We're going to be looking at supporting electric vehicles and building retrofits, both in the residential sector, as I talked about, as well as in the commercial sector. Most investment in Canada is coming from the private sector, so we've got to figure out how to align that. And as for the impact investing, we'll be looking for opportunities, working with project developers and co-funders and co-investors to make that happen in those same sectors.
Thank you, Steve. We have a question from Mitchell Beer from the Energy Mix, and it's actually brings in Councillor Scott Moffat, who's going to come in later, but I think most of you know Councillor Moffat, and he's very engaged at local level with this. So I will ask you to come into this question, but also we can bring in the two ministers. The question is, when the City of Ottawa allocated $2.6 million last year to implement the Energy Evolution Strategy, and I should say that builds on the fact that Ottawa declared a climate emergency fully 2 years ago, you stated that the plan, this is you, Scott Moffat, stated that the plan is to get as far as we can with what we have, then get more from other levels of government. The federal government is now committed to a stronger greenhouse gas reduction target, a stronger NDC. How much federal money will you need to get Ottawa's plans done? And how do you think you'll be able to access that? Where is that coming from? And then perhaps we can talk to the federal ministers.
Well, first of all, how much is available? But no, the point is, so what we've done with our plans and with the money that we have so far is we tried to leverage other opportunities. We already heard Steve speak about the Better Homes Loan Program, which was something that we were able to leverage through FCM to get more money to offer a program in the city that isn't 100% funded by the City of Ottawa. That has to be the future of this plan, and we have a team, our climate change resiliency team at the City of Ottawa, that is working on that. They're looking for those opportunities for funding. Our entire energy evolution plan, it's $30 billion today, but it's $57 billion over the course of the plan in terms of 2050 dollars. And it's something that has a major return on investment, an $82 billion return on investment for what we would actually see over the lifetime of that plan. The city doesn't have that money, so we know that we play a role in that. We'll have to invest funds in that. I think it's about $7 billion that's associated with the City of Ottawa over the lifetime of that plan. But we'll need partners. OCAF is a huge piece of that. The work that Steve's doing, the work that this group is doing with Marco and the entire team to be able to find those opportunities, they will be our partners. We won't do this alone. We need those partners. The federal government's a huge partner in that, and the province will be as well.
Minister McKenna?
Well, that's great to hear, because we need more ambition here in Ottawa. I'm just going to put it out there. What I've realized is that the most important thing anyone can do is to actually have real targets, that you have to be very clear about what you're measuring and then how you're going to bring it down. The good news is, so I'll give you an example. I remember talking to the mayor a while ago about electric buses, because when you ask what money is there, literally billions. We're investing in billions across the board, historic investments, actually on a scale that actually exceeds what they're talking about in the United States. And that's actually money that's allocated right now. But I remember talking to the mayor, and he was like, this is a while ago, and he said, we're going to do a pilot with electric buses. We're going to take a I said, a pilot? Like, why are we doing a pilot? Like, we know electric buses works. But the good news is the mayor has now said, we're going to be all electric. And that's the kind of ambition we need, because we saw the video, OCAF video. I know it's taken a while to get going, a couple of years or maybe a bit more, but we got to get going. That video just showed we know what the solutions are. So transit, we've invested billions in transit. I just made a huge announcement, 12 billion. Read the Globe editorial. Not because it talks about our investment, but it says you're building it not for today, but for 2041 and 2051. This is about building the future we need. I know that Minister O'Regan can talk about our investments in tree planting, our investment in clean energy, our investments in renewables. We announced our first ever active transit fund. We need the City of Ottawa to step up. We can build more cycling paths, more walking paths, more footbridges, and I'm on that. I know there's a footbridge. People are very interested in Ottawa. We're focused on that. We've announced our first ever natural infrastructure fund. That's huge. We've got to use nature. I know, Steve, you showed the Panama Canal. I want to see less concrete. I want to see more nature. Not that the Panama Canal isn't important. We all care about the Panama Canal, but we have huge opportunities there. We have our Green Inclusive Community Building Fund, which we've launched, which I hope, folks, if you're on this, you can apply. We need to retrofit all our buildings, and everything that's new has to be need to net zero, which is the super library. We were able to get the money to make the super library net zero. So I know Diana's probably like, that's enough, but I just want everyone to be ambitious, because the federal government is ambitious. But the City of Ottawa has declared a climate emergency. We've all declared climate emergencies. As Greta would say, now get on with it. It's not about declaring emergencies. And I know that the City of Ottawa now has a new strategy. I know there's a lot of focus on that. So as a federal government, we can help fund a lot of the big things. We also have opportunities for smaller things. But this is why our OCAF can fill the gap. And I'm very, very happy to hear that the first grant is to EnviroCenter, because they do amazing work, but smaller projects that really, really matter. So I think that's the opportunity. Let's all be really ambitious. Let's say we're going to be the greenest capital. We're not going to focus in developing in the green belt. We're going to focus on intensification. We're going to focus on being around the Ottawa River and imagining our city around the Ottawa River. We're going to focus on having the best cycling network in the world, because that's going to attract tourists, because there's also the huge job opportunity. So that's my pitch to everyone who's listening here. Yes, I've had a lot of coffee, but it is really important that we are ambitious and that we all just focus on the solutions, and we go transportation, reduce our emissions, buildings, reduce our emission, energy use, reduce our emissions. And I know Mitchell is laughing, because Mitchell Beer, we spent a lot of time talking about this, including in the Ottawa context. So there you go. That's my pitch to everyone.
That is a fantastic pitch. And I think you're absolutely right that we need a vision out there. And we also need to feel it. We need to feel that our city is moving with us. We need to look around us and say, yes, this is happening. And then we will be able to aim higher and we'll ratchet up. Minister O'Regan, anything to add from your side?
Just, I think that the commitment to local solutions is where, is what I'm most impressed with today. As Catherine mentioned, we've got huge commitments that we'll be rolling out this year on retrofits of homes and commercial buildings. And that is working with local people. One of the reasons I really love the idea of retrofits, and the International Energy Agency calls it the hidden fuel, that if we could get retrofits right, we could get almost a quarter of our way to our Paris commitments. It's amazing the leakage from our homes and our commercial buildings, the energy that seeps out of there. So by working locally with people, we'll be able to get those retrofits done. What I like about it as a guy who grew up in Labrador and, would see from a distance all these national programs being rolled out, it didn't affect me in my little community where I grew up. But retrofits affect your home, where you live. Somebody has to visit your home, has to be employed to do that and help you do those retrofits and make those assessments. On 2 billion trees, we're not just working with provinces, but we're working with local organizations in order to get those trees planted. And what I see with you guys is that you're attuned to your community better than anyone. You're there on the ground, and by partnering with you, with your eyes and your ears, your sense of the solutions that are available to you on the ground. That's how we do it. Being as local as we can. But you have a committed partner here in the federal government. There is no lacking of passion for wanting to make sure that we meet our targets and that we effectively combat climate change for the sake of our children and our grandchildren. There is no lack of ambition. But as Catherine says, we need to be even more ambitious. Though we do need There's an incredible amount of energy that is derived from ambition when it is focused on the right things. And here it is focused on the right things. And I commend all of you for your commitment to changing Ottawa. It is how we will do this. It will be community by community.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is exactly the discussion we wanted to have. It's about ambition, and it's about seeding solutions that bring everyone in, that work with poorer communities and make this a just transition. And I hope that all sides will hold each other to account. The federal commitments can't be achieved, as you've said, without local action, without local achievements. And local solutions can't be found without federal support and without learning across communities through networks such as LC3 and through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So I think we're in a really great position, but we can't, this is an emergency. Time is of the essence. We have to get going. So we're delighted to be formally launching today. As Steve said, we've already been working hard, and we're very optimistic about the future, but optimism doesn't get you there. It's real action we're looking for now. So I'm going to draw this section to a close and then move on to a local panel discussion where we have a couple of other people that we're going to bring in. Minister McKenna is going to stay for that. I think Minister O'Regan probably won't. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Diane.
It's been a pleasure. So for our local discussion, where we can go a little bit further on this, I've already brought in Scott Moffat, who is obviously Councillor for Rideau Goulburn. I also want to introduce you to Ana Gonzalez Guerrero, who is the co-founder and managing director of the Youth Climate Lab. So she's working with people in this space. She is also a fellow advisory board member for OCAF. So welcome, Anna. Welcome, Scott. I'm going to go first to Scott. Scott, we do have a compelling climate change plan. And for those of you who haven't seen it, the Energy Evolution Plan is really impressive. It doesn't necessarily at this point feel like it's actually happening, or even that we have a pathway for it to happen. So can you just tell us what needs to happen, or give us your opinion of what needs to happen to ensure that that vision that you have helped present is realized?
Thanks. Well, first, it sounds like I might need to sell it a bit stronger to the minister, so she's aware of what we actually have done here with our climate change master plan, which sets targets. But then the Energy Evolution project is what actually shows us how we get there. It's easy to set targets. A lot of municipalities have done it across this country, but actually creating a plan to get there is something that's different. And we have that, and we approved that unanimously through council. Just this past fall, the Climate Change Master Plan was approved January 2020, unanimously as well through our 24-member council. And so the steps there, we see it as I chair a committee that oversees environmental issues, but the Climate Change Master Plan is something that feeds into all other plans. So we're currently undertaking an official plan for the City of Ottawa. There was some discussion about development. I can assure you, no one's touching the Greenbelt in the City of Ottawa. But what we are doing is we have one of the most aggressive intensification plans in the country. We are developing a transportation master plan. We're developing a solid waste master plan. The Climate Change Master Plan fits into all of these. And one of the probably unsung things that we probably don't talk about enough is our climate resiliency strategy. And that's going to feed into our infrastructure master plan, our asset management plan. So we're kind of at the start of this. What I see from advocacy is they want to see things to happen quicker, and I get that. But we need these plans in place. We need to have these tools in place so that future councils have those they can pick up and they can start running with it. And our community partners can work with us too. But also, if you keep on going to the federal government, provincial government, asking them for money when you don't know what you're asking for, you can't really go anywhere with that. You need to have plans in place. You need to have strategies. You need to have specific asks and needs. And we have those now. And it's just a matter of working with our partners to figure exactly where to go over the course of the next several years. We have a phase 1 of our energy evolution, which fits into phase 1 of the Climate Change Master Plan, the next 5 years. We have some key points to that. A lot of it is looking at other parts of the city government, how we do those things, how we implement climate change-minded plans throughout the city and projects.
Thank you. As I say, it is a very impressive plan, and let's get going on it with the help of OCAF. which is great. Anna, the thing we haven't touched on quite so much in this is the community side and the just transition side, and the need to bring a variety of different groups in, both as supporters and people who are part of the solution, but also as implementers. I mean, as you know, with real agency in this process. Can you tell us what you feel from where you sit, what you feel is essential to achieve a just transition in the city of Ottawa?
Yeah, thank you, Diana. I think we know that cities play a very unique role in climate solutions. In Canada, they control over 60-ish % of emissions. Minister McKenna, I was in the same dialogue as you yesterday. I think we have the exact same schedule these days. But yeah, we are connected, or cities are connected to national and international advocacy levels. In some lucky cases to funding like OCAF or FCM's Green Municipal Fund. But municipalities also hold the closest relationships with citizens. So I think a just transition at the city level involves centering in that, and centering the responsibilities that decision makers, that goes from funders to staff to elected officials, have to their local constituents. And to me, centering equity and centering justice in our transitions requires some uncomfortable and important reckonings. That goes beyond just saying and hoping that the transition will be just. I think at the city level, at least, we need to start by recognizing that the municipal system is rooted in colonialism and that has historically and systematically excluded some important voices, namely Black, Indigenous, and people of color's voices. So those, to name a few of the other barriers that exist at the city level. So with that, I think for us, any of us working in the community level space, municipalities, OCAF, etc., need to honestly examine who is in the decision-making rooms, and more importantly, who isn't. Who is receiving that funding and who isn't. And then critically evaluate and eliminate the potential activities that are perpetuating and continuing those barriers that are in place. So yeah, this looks like moving away from ticking boxes, and Diana, you said it best, it's including folks as partners and not just as a stakeholder to consult, but really co-creating solutions that are grounded in really safe and open spaces for people to be able to participate in those.
Thank you. Mr. McKenna, you've spoken about all the wide range of things we can do and need to do. I'm just wondering, in your constituency, particularly in Ottawa, what do you hear from your constituents are their priorities in this space?
I mean, it's amazing. In Ottawa Centre, the #1 issue consistently has been climate change. But actually in Ottawa, people do understand climate change broadly, and they do want to see solutions. Like, they're very focused on when we build affordable housing, and a shout out to Ottawa Community Housing and CCOC, because they are now building to passive standards or net zero builds. And that's really what we need to be doing. But I hear a lot about this. And I mean, I laughed a bit about Steve when Steve talks about a communication strategy, but I think we do need to be better about how we talk. We got to get things done. Like, that's the most important. But we have to be better about how we talk about things. And I think the city's got a great plan. So I should be clear. It's not that I don't think the city has a great plan. And I totally agree. You need to have a climate plan and targets to reduce emissions. I think it's now let's get on with it. And I know that's a focus for the city. And I'm like, and we've talked about this, and maybe OCAF can play this role, is that you have to convene everyone. And to Anna's point, like, there are all these amazing folks that have a role to play, and it's not consulting as stakeholders. I agree totally, Anna, and it's hard to do because I find we get into this as well. It's actually real partnerships, and it's saying, okay, we need to reduce our emissions, because even at the city level, you reducing your emissions is got to be partnerships. Like, I know Ottawa, probably Ottawa Hydro is here, right? Like Zibi, there's the private sector, there's the public sector, there's the NGOs, there's the youth. The youth are definitely out there. And everyone has a role to play, and figuring out how you can integrate that and actually support them. And I think that's what OCAF can do, because it's not a ton of money, let's be clear, but it's the smaller amounts of money that can really support locally driven organizations who often don't have a lot of funding. Let's be 100% clear. I used to run a charity. One of the things we do need to stay out of, and I hope we can all think about this, and I've told my department this as well, is we can't get everyone to be just focused on grant writing, because these folks also need to get things done. So looking at how do you have less onerous ways to enable the work that is being done, and also not driving the solutions, because we decide, okay, you got to do this. And so everyone's just changing their direction because they're like, okay, now I got to get this money, so I'm going to do this other thing. That we have to enable folks. Like EnviroCenter is a great example. You can go to their website and look at what they're doing for greener buildings. That there's so many opportunities, but also the engagement piece is important. So Anna, what you guys do, Youth Climate Lab, I think is really important, right? Like we have to actually recognize that young people are finding solutions. I kind of hate when people say, young people are the future. I was like, oh my God, like young people are now. Literally, they're in the streets demanding change. They're studying. All of the young people I know have some aspect of their schooling that's focused on green and clean, and those are the jobs they want. So I think it's just about enabling folks. And I'm happy, obviously, to do as much as I can to bring folks together and really say, okay, the city wants to reduce emissions by, to get to net zero by 2050. How do you map that out? And who are the partners, and what is the role the federal government plays? As I say, we have significant amounts of money to invest. I think that we should move, and I know Garth, I don't know if he's here for the FCM. I think everyone should have to do the example of Ottawa and of the city of Ottawa, and that we fund based on what's going to reduce emissions. Because at the end of the day, green is nice. Reducing emissions is the thing, obviously building resilience, but we just have to all just every day wake up and say, how are we going to do better? And that's going to create good jobs. That's going to save people money. That's going to create opportunities. That's going to be a whole different vision of the city around the water, and ambitious and the greenest capital. So in any event, I think the city is great. I think it's a great plan. I think there's been a lot of progress, and we're certainly here as a partner, but also to our really, really awesome local organizations who have been there through thick and thin, who have been there for decades, just doing God's work to get to where we are now. And I think we're all playing catch up, but we're here to support them. Thank you.
I mean, the interesting thing about where we find ourselves now is that there are lots of win-win solutions out there. As you said, if home retrofits can save you money, make you more comfortable, and save emissions. That is great for moving forward. But it's also slightly disappointing that has been the case for the past 30, 50 years, however long we've been aware of the climate emergency, and we're only just really addressing the other kind of behavioral and flow of money issues that get to solutions. Anyway, that said, Steve, Minister McKenna has talked about ambition, which is great. Can you just describe from your perspective, from OCAF's perspective? I know we, as part of the advisory, we're really trying to do the things she said, like not make it an onerous, application process so that you spend too much money getting the money, etc. We really want to see action. Can you talk about two things? One is how you feel that OCAF is going to get us to really deep reductions and not just sort of superficial, bit better than business as usual. And the second piece is just if you would mention the investment side, because we haven't talked about that so much today, the impact investment aspect of OCAF's work and how that will contribute.
Sure. Maybe I'll talk about the impact investment first. And it's really, it's finding those right opportunities. I mean, we get, calls and emails regularly. We have $1 million to spend on green projects, or we need a few millions for green projects. For us, the point is not to cut ribbons. I mean, don't worry, Minister and Councillor, there will be ribbons to cut. But of course, we all know this is about, are we overcoming those barriers to scale? And so I think, the investments are going to be in the kinds of things of not just, necessarily looking at an individual project, but let's say a portfolio of real estate. How do we really build in decarbonization into our capital planning? This is not just short-term projects. It's really, how do we identify the things we're going to spend money on anyways, public money, private money, and make sure that those are maximizing the greenhouse gas reductions. So that really means is about partnership. We're never going to be the deepest pockets at the table, but we're going to have, investment partners. We're already in touch with project developers that we're going to work with, in buildings, in transportation, to really make sure that in this Build Back Better moment, that, as Councillor Moffat said, not only are the plans in place, but really strong implementation pathways to use that money to maximize the benefits. It's not just about building transit, it's building the walkable communities, it's building the affordable housing around there. So there's a range of investments within there that will take place. And I think, you know, this issue of deep, this is the challenge. Everything we do has the risk of only being incremental. But like, we have to take one step at a time. And so what we're trying to do is really increase the odds that what we're doing is chipping away at barriers. So we have to be really intentional, and we'll ask all our grantees and partners to say, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And what other problems need to be solved? Because maybe we complement our investments with grants or research or something across the LC3 network, or policy advocacy at all levels of government. What's needed to get this done? And, you know, it's what I call strategic opportunism. Like, you got to follow where there is momentum. You could start almost anywhere, but you need to sort of build upon that. But there's this real risk of locking in shallow retrofits. And so it's not just about the heat pumps and the techs and the cool software and the thermal imagery, which I love, but like, who are those ambassadors who are going into your home, as Minister O'Regan said? And are they just talking about, you know, stopping the drip on your shower? Or are they really saying, if you look longer term, you can go deeper? So I sort of just come back to our fundamental point about that public-private philanthropic spending. We've got to really not be so worried about how many tons did my investment get and what do I claim credit for, but how do we really align these to get maximum input for community and for the planet.
Anna, Steve has emphasized partnership, which is obviously key. You know more about what's out there, as you know, in terms of community-based partners. Can you talk a little bit about that, and whether you see a need for new organizations, or whether you think we have enough people out there willing to get engaged?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think yes and no. Yes, there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of organizations that have been creating incredible impact over the past decades in Ottawa and the rest of what is known as Canada. But there's, to change everything, we need everyone, right? And there's certainly room for more, and for more partners that are willing to spend the time and effort building those collaborative nets to also connect different of those organizations. So I was really, really glad to see part of OCAF's mission is to enhance the capacity and center on kind of collaborative efforts that help fill in the actual impact gaps that may exist in Ottawa. Steve said it in his opening remarks. One player cannot do it all. And Steve and I have talked about this, and I've been witness to some of the other conversations at the board level, where OCAF is not trying to trail in the Ottawa ecosystem and be like, hey, we've got money, we're gonna do this is what we wanna do. There is a very deliberate effort and a number of conversations, including the Social Inclusion and Climate Change Group, that are trying to really understand what's out there. What way may be missing, or what dots are we not connecting, because we usually partner with the same folks. And let's be very clear, the ability to do deliberate partnerships and partnerships that are unusual is a huge privilege, a lot of which many of us, Youth Climate Lab in particular, does oftentimes on the side of our desk with no resources really allocated to it, but we spend the time and effort because we know it's important to really build the solutions in a way that's collaborative and built on trust and recognizing that, right? But for OCAF and the Social Inclusion Group to come in with some funds for organizations in the region to more deliberately and like the space and capacity to do so, I think, yeah, it's incredible and really needed in many, many ways.
Thank you, Anna. It's great to have your voice on our advisory, amongst other things. Scott, the city clearly is key to everything that's taking place. It's a key partner for OCAF, but it's also key in setting this vision, as the minister mentioned, and making us feel as Ottawans that we live in a city that is serious about the environmental agenda and that offers us, frankly, a better life, which is lower emission. So, you know, we can have good access to public transit, we have walkable spaces, we have all these wonderful things. So I just wanted to press you. I know it's a challenge and that everything is contested at city level. You talked about the intensification plan that is contested, right? There's a lot of NIMBYism or different views on what we might want. You know, what you're talking about is a somewhat different way of living. It's a denser city. It's one where we live and work in the same communities. It feels and looks a bit different. How do you think the city can go about selling that vision to the people of Ottawa?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge that all municipalities will face. Municipalities are probably the best equipped to manage on the ground change when it comes to climate action. But we're also constantly playing a balancing act of prioritizing certain things that aren't seen as climate friendly. You know, sometimes we need new roads. Sometimes we need to widen roads. These things now, COVID changes that a little bit. It changes our strategies on post-COVID world. Does it change our transportation master plan strategies to make them more environmentally friendly? That's certainly a possibility, and that's something that we need to look at. But on that development piece, we know in a city that by the year 2046, we're going to have 400,000 extra people here. We know that by 2100, that's likely going to be 2 million. It's a doubling of our city in 80 years. Where are they going to go? And intensification isn't easy. Today, as it stands right now, the city is not equipped to do 100% intensification. We don't have the infrastructure in place, the social infrastructure, but also the hard infrastructure, the water and sewer capacity in the communities that need it. And it's also just a challenge, putting a 12-unit, 3-story apartment building in a community that was designed as in our bungalow belt. It is a challenge, but we need to do it. And so we need leadership that isn't necessarily afraid of the pushback that they'll get from communities, knowing that we're doing our best to integrate some of this development into established communities. We cannot keep growing out. Eventually, we will run into land that we do not want to lose. There are marginal lands, there's no question, but we're really exhausting those options. And now we're right up against agricultural land, prime agricultural land in Eastern Ontario. Some of the best land that you'll find anywhere in Eastern Ontario is right adjacent to Stittsville and Canada. So we need to see that these communities, when we're done in 25 years, Barrhaven will only grow up. It won't have the ability to grow out anymore. Based on our plans today, it will only be able to grow up, which means more towers, which means less single-family homes and more, multi-residential living. And that's the future of our downtown area. That's the future of our inside Greenbelt area. That's the future of our outside Greenbelt area. And it's the future of our villages too. So it won't be easy because we know we'll have those concerns raised by communities, but it's something that we need community support on. We need community associations to be on board with us, and we need leadership on that too.
Diana, if I might jump in, if I could, on that, I think it's a critical issue, and we won't get into it here, but stay tuned. OCAF's going to be doing work in this space to try to bring these discussions forward. And it's really like we just need to foster that civil discussion. I call it getting away from the to the Like, how do we do this together? It's not fighting about parking versus bike lane. It's like we have this common problem. We all don't want the growth boundary to be, we don't want growth to be going off and eating up the countryside. But not everyone wants new development in their neighborhood. So let's talk about that together. And I think we have some clever ways to bring that conversation forward. So stay tuned on that front.
I mean, you're absolutely right, and it's critical. And I think changing the conversation so that there isn't a viable option where we don't reduce our emissions. I mean, that's the mindset that has to change. And then we can have more productive conversations about how we get there in a way that is just and inclusive. Minister McKenna, you're a great advocate. We're about to end the session. Very briefly, do you have any final reflection?
Yeah, one of the things I think is, well, beyond ambition, because I actually find people will live up to ambition. Because if you say, and I know I keep on saying this, but I just like it, like the greenest capital ever, then that'll just be something that's good. It's good for folks who are farmers, right? And we have Smart Farm. Like, that's a really amazing initiative. We need everyone to be part of this. It gives everyone an opportunity to play a positive role into this. And of course, there are going to be tough discussions. Like, I've lived it. I've lived it in my past portfolio and in my current portfolio and locally. But I think if you have a vision, people will come. And if they understand why it's good for them, why it's good for cleaner air, why it's good for cleaner water, why it's good for jobs, including jobs for young people, why it's good for providing the services that we need. If we intensify, then we don't have to worry that we don't have good transit to communities that are totally cut off. Like, I think we do really need to be thoughtful about how we get everyone to feel part of this. And I think Anna raised a really important point, because we haven't really talked about it enough, is the social inclusion side. By unusual suspects, I mean farmers, but I also mean racialized communities, because often, like, they're not as represented, but they care greatly about clean air and clean water, and about their community and how it's developed, and tackling climate change. So, and Indigenous peoples, I mean, are on the, they're on the front lines. They've been on the land for millennia, and we need to just make sure we have these diverse voices, and we have to talk about the multiple benefits. Yesterday, I did a public transit announcement. It was in Hamilton, and the head of McMaster Health Services said, this is a health solution. And that's why we have to be talking about all these things that we value, that are really important, that we may not always recognize are so critically important to the quality of life we want. And if there's anything that came out of the pandemic, it's that the things that are really important may not be the things that we thought were so important before. That your community is what you make of it, that being able to go outside, like, shout outs to folks who Dave the groomer, like, I think he transformed many people's lives. Like, I didn't really like cross-country skiing before. I'll just put it out there. I thought it was really boring. And then I would go out and I'd just be marveling when I looked out at how beautiful it is. But those were trails that were across not just Ottawa, the greater Ottawa area, that folks stepped up and improved lives in their community. And I think this is what it is. Climate action is about improving lives. Of course, it's about targets and down the road, but it's about cleaner air and cleaner water and healthier, more sustainable communities right now. And the last thing I'll leave with, because I actually have to leave, sadly, to go to question period, maybe not my favorite time of the day, that, look, we're going to get out of the pandemic. And I know it's been, like, gosh, the worst year, and it's been devastating, and people have died, but it's been so hard on everyone and the mental health of folks. But we're going to get out of it. But we're still going to have the climate crisis. Like, that's still going to be there. So the only thing I would say to make people hopeful is we thought we'd never have vaccines. I remember talking to folks at the beginning of the crisis. They're like, well, often we don't get vaccines for these kind of things. We had vision that everyone said, we're going to solve a problem. We're going to work together. We're going to do it on science. Because at the end of the day, I think Greta said it, like, the science is the science of science. Like, you can't get around the science. You can say we don't want to do these things, but that's not going to get you where you want to go. So you have to have vision. You have to listen to science and scientists. You need to bring everyone together. And you have to drive to that goal incessantly. And then it's a better future. And that's what I think is the hopeful part about, we will get out of this pandemic. We can take the same ambition, drive, vision, come together for a common goal, which is tackling climate change, but in a way that improves our lives. And so that's what I'm very hopeful about. I think people are starting to understand this is about the jobs, about the future we want, air, water, bringing in diverse communities, because we can do this. It's not easy, but I think we can also do it in a positive way where everyone feels part of it. So I obviously am happy to do anything I can as the member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre. Huge congratulations to folks here, to OCAF, but of course the city, to all the community organizations who've been out there, but also the private sector and everyone that actually has this vision. So greenest capital ever. Just aim for it. Let's just do it. And with that, I got to go, but it's been really great. Thanks very much, Diana.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us this morning and setting an ambitious and enthusiastic tone to our conversations. Steve, it's ours for the taking. And I think, as the Minister said, we actually do know how to do everything. It's just getting it done. It's not easy, but it is just getting it done. This isn't beyond the range of possibility. Last word on OCAF before we charge off and start getting it done.
Housing. Housing is the fundamental issue that's in the middle of the Venn diagram between community interests and climate needs. How efficient it is, how affordable it is, where it's located, can you walk? It's going to be a key issue of intersection between the Ottawa Community Foundation, and OCAF. And importantly, people understand it, people get it, and there are a lot of folks working in that space, investing in that space. So it's a huge opportunity. And to look at land use policy, is housing policy, is transport policy, is climate policy. With that in mind, if we remember that we've got housing as a great starting point, I think we'll go far. So I want to thank everyone, Diana, Scott, the ministers, Anna. Reach out to us. We don't do this without you. And as I said, it's not about us.
Thanks so much, Steve. Thanks to everyone who's joined us this morning. I hope you feel as enthusiastic as we do here about the possibilities in Ottawa, the greenest capital. So enjoy your weekends, enjoy the sunshine, and come back to us with your ideas. Thank you. Bye-bye.